I'm Lisa Elfring. I'm a faculty member at the University of Arizona, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about what you can expect when you're planning for a Pulse Ambassador workshop. I'm coming to you today from my office at the University of Arizona, and I'd like to share the University of Arizona's Land Acknowledgement Statement, which was recently developed in collaboration with the tribes in our area. We have committed at our institution to beginning every meeting with an out loud reading of the statement in its entirety as written. So I'm going to do that here. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. All right, so let's start talking about what to expect when you're preparing for a Pulse Ambassador workshop. It's important to begin with the outcomes in mind. And for our Pulse Ambassador workshops, there are both short-term and longer-term outcomes. The shorter-term outcomes include developing a shared vision for the department, or envisioning the future state, and using organizational change skills in order to make that departmental vision as broad and applicable as possible. Once that vision's developed, then groups identify barriers that might get in the way of that vision and who owns them, and then go on to develop an action plan that identifies steps and addresses barriers that will lead to achieving that vision. And during this process, department members are engaged in practicing facilitative leadership and communication strategies that will serve them well in taking action as they move forward, and also hopefully in some of the other work they do. The longer term outcomes include implementing that action plan and making progress towards the vision, using resources from Pulse and other resources to help in that process, implementing national education reform recommendations, and maintaining communications with institutional leaders who can help maintain the institutional commitment toward that vision. So the ambassador team is put together from faculty members based on the type of institution that is going to be visited, the location, and the unique needs of each department. Before the workshop, the ambassador team provides the department with the materials that are needed for initial preparation and organization of the workshop. The department, including the faculty members and others who are engaged in teaching, will complete self-assessments that reflect on the specific needs or concerns of the department. During the workshop, the ambassadors will facilitate activities that engage and support and guide the faculty members as they develop an action plan for change. And after the workshop, the department will continue to interact with the ambassadors in order to track progress and support the work that the department's making towards change. Pulse offers opportunities for both in-person and remote workshops, and I'm going to talk about each of those separately. For in-person workshops, the framework is that there will be 2 virtual planning meetings with the campus leadership team in advance of the workshop. And then once the ambassadors arrive on campus, there will be an in-person meeting just prior to the workshop. The costs that are covered by the department for an in-person workshop include lodging for all the ambassadors for 2 nights at the site, and their travel, meals, and honoraria. A typical in-person workshop agenda looks like this. On what we call day 0, the ambassadors arrive, meet with the administrators that may also happen at some point during day 1 or even day 2 if needed. And then typically have dinner with the campus leadership group to finish up any last-minute planning. Day 1 of the workshop includes all the workshop participants. The morning is spent on introduction and ground rules and building collaborative leadership. And the afternoon is spent in small groups doing a visioning exercise so the department can articulate where they would like to be in 5 years. Day 2 of the workshop begins with a review of the vision, identifying and removing the barriers. And then the afternoon is spent developing the action plan, including timelines and benchmarks, doing any follow-up planning that's required. And at some point in the afternoon, the ambassadors depart. For remote workshops, the planning looks very similar. There are 2 virtual planning visits with the campus leadership team prior to the workshop, and then a virtual visit just prior to the beginning of the workshop. The costs that are covered by the department for remote workshops include honoraria for the ambassador team. So a typical remote workshop agenda consists of the same kinds of activities that are done in the in-person workshop, but spread out over more days. We've all experienced the exhaustion that can come from interacting with a screen for long periods of time. And so we try to remove that, or at least reduce it, by spreading the workshop out over shorter periods of time and several days. A typical workshop agenda would look just like this, would look something like this. Just prior to the workshop, there are virtual meetings with administrators and a virtual meeting with the campus leadership group. Days 1 and 2 of the remote workshop focus on building collaborative leadership and doing visioning in small groups. And days 3 and 4 are spent identifying and removing barriers, again in small groups, prioritizing items for the action plan, developing timelines and benchmarks, doing the follow-up planning, and again, at some point, the ambassadors leave and the department members continue to move forward with their planning. So assessment is a really important component of our ambassadors workshops, and what we need departments to help us in that process. And so departments commit to providing reflective self-assessment results in advance of the ambassadors workshop. During the workshop, we'll administer short formative evaluations so that we can assess as we go and make any adjustments needed during the workshop. Post-workshop evaluations just after the end of the workshop. The department needs to complete the Pulse snapshot rubric and come to consensus on that and submit it through the Pulse rubric portal. And then the ambassador team will be back in touch with the department to follow up with them and to collect data on how their action plan is moving forward. So, as you prepare for an ambassador's workshop, there are some next steps. The ambassador team will share their timelines, any preparatory documents, instructions for completing the pre-workshop assessments, including the Pulse snapshot rubric, also any needed supplies, and of course the agenda for the event. The campus leadership team will schedule the ambassador team meetings with the administrators, and depending on the format of the workshop, either arrange for meeting rooms, refreshments and lunches during the workshop, or set up breakout rooms for the virtual workshop. And finally, the campus leadership is really really in the best position to encourage all the department members who are involved in teaching to attend, to complete the pre-meeting readings and the self-assessments.